Right now, you can get any queen size premium MyPillow regularly $69.98 for only $29.98. Go to mypillow.com and click on the radio listener square. Don't forget to use the promo code Carter. Today's podcast is brought to you by AMAC. AMAC offers an alternative to just about every benefit that AARP offers, but without the liberal agenda. Listen to that, without the liberal agenda. Go to amac.us/Carter and join today. Join today. Folks, what is going on? Every time I think things are going to get better. I'm like, okay, we're a few weeks away from Christmas. Hanukkah started. Oh gosh, the year's almost over. We've had like a heck of a year, right? COVID, the election, lockdowns, the wild west of media out there. And we don't even know what to believe. All of a sudden things get weirder. They get really weird. And there was a story that broke. It actually broke on Sky News in Australia. I caught it on Sunday, right? I caught this story and it was like, whoa, I knew that, but it was like, whoa, all of a sudden I was just looking at it. 2 million people from China, members of the Chinese Communist Party, spread around the world in businesses, in other governments, in universities, maybe in a restaurant. I don't know. Anywhere. They could be at your house. I don't know. 2 million people. That's a lot of people. Like basically spying for China. Spying for China. And I want you to think about this intellectual property theft. The fact that we as Americans, our government has basically been, let's be honest, kind of in bed with China. Okay, Eric Swalwell, in bed with Chinese spies like Fang Fang. Our government has actually been in bed with China. And I want to throw the word in allegedly, because I did not see anything. I do not have any evidence of the intensity of the relationship that Eric Swalwell on the House Intelligence Committee, mind you, had with Fang Fang, the Chinese spy. But we do know that there was a connection, right? We do know that's all public now. But then all of a sudden we get this report out of Australia, which is like crazy that there are all these Chinese spies. And get this, most of them, and I want to say alleged again, most of them working in the United States, in the United Kingdom, and in Australia. Of course they would be. And we have to think about this logically. It's not just what they're taking, intellectual property, but think beyond that. I mean, I've covered these stories for so long, working with intelligence agencies overseas, either Western intelligence agencies in Europe, the United States, our intelligence agencies like the CIA covering stories in war zones like Afghanistan and Iraq. And think about what it is we are susceptible to and what it is they are trying to gather. Because we don't always think about this and where they're trying to embed people into what areas of our government and our school systems, our education systems. Sometimes it's medical issues, right? Sometimes it's research, right? We've seen that now with COVID, the big race to find the cure. And thankfully, Pfizer right now and a lot of Moderna and other companies have come up with vaccinations. But we know that these are races to find the cure or races to gather information so that they can be 20 steps ahead of us with our information, right? We have to think about this. How deep did the Chinese spies get into our government? We have seen this happen with Russia just recently, the Russia hack into the U.S. Treasury Department and our Commerce Department. And now with China, we have to ask ourselves a lot of questions about this because we have exposed our country's national security. And by the way, President Trump is the only president that I remember covering that has actually been tough, really tough on China. I'll give you an example. You guys are going to love this. When I worked at the Washington Times more than a decade ago, I remember this was under the Obama administration right at the very beginning. And Bill Gertz is going to love me for this. Bill Gertz is a phenomenal writer, an investigative reporter who covers a lot on national security, mainly dealing with China. And I was working with Bill Gertz at the time, and I was actually at the Pentagon and ready to do kind of like an editorial board. At that point in time, it was with Admiral Mullen and others at the Pentagon. And they said to me, as long as you don't bring Bill Gertz into that editorial board to discuss China, we'd be fine talking about anything else. But they didn't want to talk about China. And the reason they didn't want to talk about China is because basically for a long time, our government's been kind of in the pocket of China because we have so many of our companies in China, manufacturing in China. And there was this weird belief that if we kept pushing, like if we had our companies in China, if we kept moving more of our products and trade with China, that somehow the Chinese government would shift from being communist to eventually evolving into kind of a capitalist society. But instead, something drastically different happened. China became more and more powerful. It encroached into other parts of the world, and it developed a new kind of capitalism, one that wasn't really capitalist at all. It was like the Chinese Communist Party utilized capitalist ideals, right, for their companies to build themselves up, but their people weren't any more free. The Chinese government, Communist Party, is an amoral government. Look at what's happening with the Uyghurs. Look at what's happening to the people in China. Look at this weird credit system, which, by the way, I believe to some extent we're adopting some of these weird tactics on our social media. You know, the Chinese monitor all the Chinese Communist Party. I want to say that because Chinese people are great people with a great history. And they are really suffering under this regime, this communist regime. But think of how the Chinese Communist Party watches their people. Look what's happening in the United States to us, right? Now we're hearing Facebook. By the way, Facebook has some communist, I believe, party members working inside their own censorship division. We have heard this. There are reports out there that there are people from China on H-1B visas, half a dozen or so, that are working in Facebook's censorship department, like they're censoring. I guess they're good at that. This is what the Chinese are good at, right? Censoring, not allowing people to speak, not allowing free speech. We see that happening with Twitter. We see that happening with Facebook. It's really, really scary. And it is something that we need to be thinking about. 2 million, by the way. We need to be worried about this. And with a Biden-Harris administration, can you imagine Biden who buddies up to China? And we've seen that. We've seen that in the past. Nothing is going to change in the future. China is loving this. They want Biden. They need Biden. They didn't like Trump. Why? Because Trump, he wasn't predictable. And he was hitting them hard. Trade especially. And saying, we're not going to do deals with you because you are, one, manipulating currency, and two, you're stealing our intellectual property and our jobs. We're not going to do this anymore. I want to talk about something else came up in the news, another crazy thing right this week. And it's Biden's possible picks for attorney general. I got to tell you, I am just completely disgusted because one of them is Governor Andrew Cuomo, who is a failure as a governor, who has I don't even know how this man can look in the mirror and be proud of himself after what happened with COVID. I can't even believe that this guy won some kind of award. I don't even want to talk about what kind of an award this man would get for his handling of the COVID issue and the COVID crisis in New York City, when so many elderly people died, when they actually transferred people with COVID into elderly facilities, right? And exposed them to the virus. And this is the guy that Biden wants to give possibly the attorney general spot to? Do we really want this? I mean, Janice Dean, gosh, I love her. On Fox News, she is amazing. But she has been fighting both of her in-laws died because of what she says was irresponsible behavior and actual criminal behavior by Governor Cuomo. by moving people in that knowingly had COVID into facilities where people were vulnerable. Now Biden, this is the guy at the top of his list, right? And Sally Yates, by the way, Sally Yates, here she comes back. Here come back all the people who trampled on our Constitution, violated the law, lied before Congress, hid information from the non-Justice Department. I got another bone to pick with that because, by the way, I'm not saying that what President Trump had was any better. He thought he had a good pick in William Barr. He thought William Barr would be great. Everyone did. I did. I heard great things about William Barr. Sure, I heard rumors about him and that, he was in the bureaucracy for a long time. Don't trust him. That was like one person that said from the very beginning, do not trust William Barr. And I said, no, you're just being too negative. You don't know what you're talking about. Boy, I was wrong. And I came out months ago to say I was wrong to trust William Barr. I did not believe months ago that William Barr would do anything because he hasn't done anything. It's all lip service. He's just like Jeff Sessions. It's a joke. I want you to think about how important this is. I don't think I ever realized it. It was kind of like a light bulb moment for me when all of a sudden I sat back and I thought to myself, if no one makes a move at the Department of Justice, if the Department of Justice doesn't actually dish out justice, then everything that we write about, everything that I exposed, everything that Congress exposed, Congressman Devin Nunes's report, Ron Johnson, Senator Ron Johnson, Senator Lindsey Graham, Senator Chuck Grassley, all the mountains of reports that exposed the Russia hoax and the people that were involved in it, people that actually attempted to coup the president of the United States, and some would say actually did succeed in a coup because there are people that do not believe that President Trump actually lost this election. They believe there was fraud, alleged fraud. Okay, some people are allowed to believe that. By the way, YouTube, Twitter, whoever, Google, anybody that's listening to this, people are allowed to talk. They're allowed to question things. You don't have any right to stop people from questioning. I mean, we can make up our own minds. We don't need you to babysit us. I hear YouTube's going to remove everything that has anything to do with the election that they don't like, right? You all have read that, right? Do you all see what's happening to our country? We are literally losing our nation. We are losing fundamental freedoms. If we don't stand up and say no more of this, then we will lose it slowly but surely, because we have, over the last decade, lost those essential freedoms. Now it's kind of weird. It's like pseudo. It's like we've got, companies, private firms and companies and publicly traded companies and, censoring us, censoring our speech. And now we have a media that's completely connected to, the Biden administration that won't even speak out against Joe Biden, that won't even report on the incidences with Hunter Biden. I mean, it really wasn't until the FBI, and we saw recently that they admitted that they were investigating Hunter Biden since 2018. His taxes and other issues connected with China, connected with Ukraine. How many people in the media, NPR, the Washington Post, the New York Times, all of these news agencies went after the New York Post when they published those stories, went after John Solomon when he published his stories, went after me, went after anyone that talked about Hunter Biden. How many of those? Think about it. And now after the election, we find out, oh no, they were investigating him. They still are. They're still investigating him. But I want to go back to this really quick because I can't get over the fact that we are going to either have Sally Yates or someone like Andrew Cuomo sitting at the Department of Justice. What is that going to do? Is this going to be the Department of Injustice? I wonder how many people that were involved with helping President Trump, people who were fighting what they thought was election fraud, people connected to Trump, Trump's family, President Trump himself will be targeted by the Department of Justice under a Biden-Harris administration. I wonder how many. The Southern District of New York targeting President Trump after he gets out of office. We already saw Twitter saying that, wow, we can remove him from Twitter. You know what? I hope that if they do, everybody moves to Parler. Remember that. Move to Parler. Just say if they take out President Trump, if they remove him as a citizen from Twitter, I'll just go. I'll go too. Everybody should just move. Can you imagine? So Parler, you better get ready. Your app better be as good, if not better than Twitter's. Because we cannot afford for these social media platforms to be monopolized. We cannot afford that. As Americans, we can't. We already have a monopoly in the media. We have a monopoly now on our social media platforms. It's all towards the left. I'm not even going to say liberal anymore. I told you I'm not saying liberal anymore. These are leftist, Marxist, socialists. These people want to fundamentally change one of the greatest nations on earth. They want to fundamentally change it. They want to change it completely. They are globalists. They don't believe in sovereignty, and they do not believe in our country. Not the same way we believe in them. Not the same way at all. Look, the weather's getting cold, and the best way to keep yourself warm can be summed up in 2 words, guys. Heat holders. Christmas is around the corner. Hanukkah's here. Buy a gift for your family or friends, and you will not make a mistake if you buy heat holders. I can tell you this. They've got amazing gloves, socks, scarves, blankets. I mean, everything you can think of. You don't have to have those little things to put in your pockets anymore. These products will keep you warm all through winter. I'm telling you, I believe in it enough that I'm putting them out here on my podcast every day. I want you to go out there and buy heat holders. That's heatholders.com. And I want you to enter the code Carter at checkout to save 15% off your order. That's 15% off heat holders. Receive free shipping with any purchase of $25 or more. There is no need for icy cold feet this winter. Just go to heatholders.com and use the code Carter. That's CARTER, heatholders.com, making life warmer. Okay, I want to play you a clip because this is really important. I want you to hear Sally Yates. She's slamming Donald Trump for abusing his power. Listen to this clip.
His constant attacks on the FBI, the free press, inspectors general, federal judges, they all have one purpose: to remove any check on his abuse of power. Put simply, he treats our country like it's his family business, this time bankrupting our nation's moral authority at home and abroad.
What a hypocrite. What a hypocrite, Sally Yates. Sally Yates, James Comey, James Clapper, the whole gang, Susan Rice, Joe Biden, who was vice president there, Barack Obama. All of these people are liars and hypocrites. They are lying to you. They are gaslighting the American public. They are gaslighting you. They are gaslighting the world. They should be ashamed of themselves, but they're not, because they're in control, folks. This is what they want. They are seizing power. The establishment did not want President Trump in office. They didn't want you to vote for him. It didn't matter how many of you got out there, right? How many? 74 million actually voted for President Trump? Almost 74 million? Thereabouts? More than even in 2016. They do not care about you. People like Sally Yates, they're working with the bureaucracy. They're working to keep things intact. They don't want you to shake it up. They want endless wars overseas. They abuse power continuously. We saw that for the first time because of President Trump. Because President Trump was elected. Because he was elected, we were able to see that. We were able to expose the Russia hoax, all of the documents. They can't hide away. They can't run away from those. Their emails, their text messages to one another, their insurance policies. The way they spied on Carter Page, right? The way they spied on him during the campaign and afterwards. I mean, this is unbelievable obstruction of the U.S. Constitution. And you know what? They just sat back and laughed. They didn't care. Remember how many times John Brennan would go on Twitter? He would call President Trump a clear and present danger every time we tried to expose the truth. And we did. And we did. Devin Nunes did in his Russia report. Ron Johnson did in his Senate reports. Chuck Grassley is continuing to expose it in his reports. John Solomon in his reports. John and I early on. Every time they just sat back because they owned the system. They embedded themselves so deep in this system, in our government, that they weren't afraid they would ever have to pay the price. They weren't ever worried. It's disgusting. It's wrong. We have to hold them accountable. President Trump did everything he could in his 4 years of office. The Abraham Accords, the Morocco agreement between Israel and Morocco, everything that he could do, moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, recognizing Jerusalem, right? Impossible feats, heroic. I mean, people said these were miracles. Like they couldn't even believe this happened. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter. His foreign policy, national policy, the lowest unemployment for Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, right? Didn't matter. It didn't matter because these people like John Brennan, James Comey, James Clapper, and others, they just kept targeting the president. The FBI targeting the president. The rhinos targeting President Trump. And it goes all the way back. This isn't just about Barack Obama, folks. I mean, this goes all the way back to the Bush administration, even when I was covering the U.S.-Mexico border. And this is where I want to take you right now. On Saturday, I get a message. I actually was not feeling well at all. It was late in the afternoon. I'd been exhausted. I was sleeping. I thought I had COVID. I was just so sick. Felt better, was just a migraine. Get a message from an old friend of mine named Ed Hendy, an incredible American out in Texas. He has his own radio show. He's also has a great restaurant in Houston, a steakhouse in Houston. And he's done so much work for our law enforcement officials along the border. And I've known Ed since I covered the story on Ramos and Compean. I don't know if you all remember this, but I spent 2 years basically covering the story of 2 Border Patrol agents who were wrongly convicted of violating the civil rights of a drug dealer on the U.S.-Mexico border. It was a long story. During that time, I spent 2 years on that story. And at the end of those 2 years, on President Bush's last day in office, he finally commuted their sentences. They were actually sitting in prison. They were convicted to 12 to 13 years for basically defending themselves against a drug dealer who they believed pointed a weapon at them. They fired, Ramos fired. There were some complications. They made some mistakes, but they should not have been convicted 12 to 13 years in prison. And I was so grateful to be a part of their story. And I became very good friends with them then. And Monica, Nacho Ramos's wife, I became friends with her. Anyways, I haven't seen them in a long time. But during that time, I also became very good friends with a Border Patrol agent named Gary Brugman. And Gary Brugman was also wrongfully convicted, although he never had a commutation or a pardon. I became friends with Gary as he watched my stories on Nacho Ramos and Jose Compean unfold. That was at the time I was at the Daily Bulletin. So anyways, on Saturday, I get a call from Ed Hendy, old friend. It was like, could you come on Zoom and be a part of our prayer meeting, like a prayer breakfast at the restaurant. It was in Texas. And he said, you won't believe this, but I've got Gary Brugman. I've got Nacho Ramos. I've got Jose Compean, and I also have Gilmer Hernandez, who was a former sheriff's deputy in Edwards County. He was in Texas from Rock Springs, and he was convicted also on charges that he violated the civil rights of an illegal alien. The reason I bring this up, folks, is because this all started way back then, putting the pressure on law enforcement and anybody who was doing the right thing, trying to do their job. It was like, the Bush administration wanted to pass immigration reform. I remember this like it was yesterday. They couldn't pass immigration reform because they had a mess at the U.S.-Mexico border. I was breaking those stories. There was a national security implications all across the U.S.-Mexico border, nearly 2,000 miles. Now under President Trump, we have seen a president that actually means what he says, and he wants to put a stop to it. not because he's like some anti-immigrant person. No, it's because he opposes what was happening to our country, illegal immigration, right? The dangers, the implications of that on our national security. But I remember these prosecutors along the border. I want to play you a quick clip. And the reason I bring this up is because all of them are praying for a pardon from President Trump. Their lives have been turned upside down. I want you to know also that Congressman John Culberson, former Congressman John Culberson, was there at the prayer breakfast. And so was Congressman Ted Poe. They called him TP. They were both huge advocates to get the truth out. Remember, we've been fighting for truth for a long time. The Russia hoax was just a part of all of that. I want you to hear this clip right now from Gary Brugman.
Putting in for a pardon wasn't an option because the Bush administration put me in. Obama administration wasn't gonna pardon me.
Right.
And now that my president's here, and I think this is the best chance that I got. And my friend Joe Paggs actually hooked me up with Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Adicott, who's my attorney, and he took on my case because I'm a veteran, and he's been completely amazing. But I really hadn't even thought about putting in for a pardon because I never thought it'd happen until President Trump, because he's a native New Yorker like myself. He grew up in Jamaica, Queens, and as a kid in the early 80s, I worked in Jamaica, Queens. I know the area he grew up in. President Trump, the Trump name has always been in my life as long as I can remember. I'm from New York. Trump's always been there. And I had all these signs, so I finally did it and did the application, and Jeff's been helping me with that. And not to mention, President Trump's always out there, and he loves the Coast Guard, he loves the Border Patrol. And I love the way he treats his country and everything that he does. He's my president, and I figured if I had a chance for a pardon now, I mean, I know that if he actually just looked at the case, if he just looked at it, he would probably sign off on it. And you know what? Even if he didn't, I just want to get it to his attention so that he can see it and make his own decision.
It's just great to have Gary on the show. And I just, like I said, I just talked to Gary over the weekend. It was amazing. These people, I never do this, but if President Trump, if you're listening to this podcast and you want to make a difference in the lives of these great Americans, please give them a pardon. I mean, look at their cases. I know they're on your desk. I know they're at the White House. All four of these men are incredible men. They have basically paid an extraordinary price because of political reasons. All you have to do is look at their cases to realize what happened to them. And to make a difference for them and their families by giving them a full pardon. I'm grateful that they are my friends. I'm grateful that they are a part of my life. And I will continue, Gary, Gilmer, Nacho, and Jose, to be friends with you and to fight for you and to fight for law enforcement for as long as I'm a journalist and for as long as I have a public voice. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about something, though, that's pretty awesome. And that has really changed my life, especially in the winter, right? In the winter when you're feeling, run down, when the odds of you catching something is pretty high up there. Well, it's Field of Greens, folks. It's Field of Greens by Brickhouse Nutrition. I take it every day. While other health products boast about one vegetable, Field of Greens is packed with 18, get this, 18 different vegetables. It's clinically researched, essential fruits and vegetables, plus green tea, ginger, turmeric, and beets. This powerful combination not only can support your heart health, it can actually support your healthy immune system. Imagine that. In winter, and especially with COVID and all of these other flus and illnesses, you want to build up that immune system. You want to feel ready to fight, right? Ready to fight. Well, you can do that with Field of Greens. Just put 1 scoop in a glass of water and you're done. Go to BrickHouseSara.com and get 15% off your first order with the promo code Carter. Don't forget Carter. That's CARTER. That's BrickHouseSara.com. Available in 2 flavors. They're delicious. Trust me on this. Both are great. BrickHouseSara.com, promo code Carter. Now, I don't like to leave you with just all of this heavy stuff. I know there's a lot of heavy things in the world, things that make us feel like, we are never, ever going to get through this year. Like this is the year that the Mayans were talking about, right? Not 2012, but 2020. Like this is going to be just like, I want it over with. My husband keeps saying, we got to move. I want to move to Texas. I want this year over with. I want to move to Wyoming. I want to get out there somewhere far away. Well, why not space? Just kidding. Elon Musk is planning on taking us there to Mars in the next few years. So I don't think we need to worry about that. Hopefully we won't cause the same amount of trouble out in space like we do here on planet Earth. I'm just hoping for that. That much I'm hoping for and praying for. But there are a lot of stories out there right now, about very serious issues. And it's nothing to laugh about, folks. I've had people on our show like Luis Elizondo, who has now become a very good friend of mine. In fact, I was talking to him just yesterday, and we were talking about all of these incredible stories, ones that last week we talked about with the Israeli security official from their space agency that talked about, a galactic federation, and that, Israel and the United States are aware that there is UFOs, and that there are possibly these unmanned aerial vehicles are not from Earth. They are not from maybe enemy states like Russia or China, what some might suspect, but that these vehicles move so rapidly, so quickly, and are so advanced that they can't be from Earth. Really fascinating stuff. Well, there's this really interesting story. It's a piece from 1969. It's called the Texas Ufo Sightings, and they date back all the way back to 1969. Jenny Terre, who's a writer on SaraACarter.com. You guys got to read the stories there. SaraACarter.com put this in my packet so I could talk to you about it. The reason it's so fascinating is because in here they talk about this place called Marfa, Texas. We all know, we've heard about all the UFO sightings, in Texas, in New Mexico, some going back into the 1940s. Others more recent as this year. But there's this place in Texas called Marfa. And I have this really interesting story about what happened to me there. I was actually covering the U.S.-Mexico border. This was when I worked at the Daily Bulletin. A photographer by the name of Therese Tran, she worked with me. She and I were basically like scouring the entire border, just traveling together, looking for stories, talking to people, going into Mexico, coming back into the United States, covering the drug cartels. And we were late one night, we were at a diner somewhere near Marfa, and we ran into some folks that were actually filmmakers. And I guess Matthew McConaughey was making a film in this area. They were doing some filming, and we started talking to them, the camera crew and such. And they said, hey, have you ever seen the Marfa lights? Have you ever been to this area called, it was like a lookout point in Marfa, Texas. And I never heard of it. And I said, no, what's it about? And they said, well, it's really unique. It's interesting. There's apparently nobody's ever really been able to figure out like what causes this light show in the mountains. But if you go there, every once in a while, people can see it. And they actually built a lookout point there. And I thought, well, this is just amazing. So I have to get down there. My curiosity got the best of me. It was really late. I didn't care. I'm like, let's finish eating our food here at this amazing diner in Texas. Because, by the way, there is no place better in our union, sorry everybody else, than Texas for great food. And Tex-Mex food is one of the best on planet Earth. I have eaten everywhere, and Texas has delicious, delicious, delicious food. So we wrapped up our lovely dining experience at the diner. We got in our vehicle, and we drove to the lookout point in Marfa, Texas. And there was a family there, just one other family, and me and my friend Therese. And we were standing there, and all of a sudden, there were these incredible lights across the canyon. And it was, they would move so quickly. It almost looked like you'd see a light in one spot and then it'd dance across the mountain and then it'd show up in another spot, right? Just kind of like this mystery. Now, I'm not saying these are UFOs. I'm saying it's in this UFO story. People are talking about it. But what's interesting is that I actually saw these lights for myself. So I'm going to read to you a little bit out of this story, which I think is so fascinating. Before I wrap up, I'm going to leave you with this mysterious, I guess, part of the earth, something that people are still actually looking into. They don't actually understand what's causing these lights, but I'll read this to you. Texas has also bred its share of peculiar UFO devotees such as Heaven's Gate leader Marshall Applewhite, scary, who was born in Spur and had his first spiritual vision while walking along a Galveston beach. Now, that guy was kind of weird. Let's move on. As well as some members of the Republic of Texas who reportedly believe that the Marfa lights are proof of a subterranean energy grid that the Pentagon is trying to tap into with alien technology. That is just a wild news story about the Marfa lights. Now, I did not see any alien technology. My editor at the Daily Bulletin, when I told him about this and we showed him video and pictures and whatever else we brought back, he was laughing. He's like, "Are you sure those weren't people trying to run across the border?" I said, "No, those lights moved way too fast for it to be anybody running across the border." But I don't know. Could it have been a flashlight? Could it have been something else? I don't know. What I do know is that scientists have been looking at this for quite some time. They can't answer it. It's a mystery. And it's something that people will, I guess, make up stories for years to come until somebody figures out what they are. But remember, there are things that we cannot explain. And there are things that may change the way we see the world and the way we see each other. And I look forward to bringing people back on the show. You know, it's a big interest of mine to have Luis Elizondo back on, to have Nick Pope back on, who headed the United Kingdom's efforts under the Defense Ministry to follow those reports of unidentified aerial phenomena. But I think it's a good place for us to talk. And it kind of takes us away from the really cruddy world that we see here in the swamp in Washington, D.C. And for that, I am grateful. And I'm also grateful for you. Thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. President Trump, please give Gary Brugman a pardon, Nacho Ramos and Jose Compean, as well as Gilmer Hernandez. I know you've got a lot on your plate, but I hope you do. Remember, here at the Sara Carter Show, we're always trying to bring you the latest stories and the most important stories. Again, I love reading your reviews. Please give us a 5-star rating, whether you're on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcast. We read your reviews and we look at those ratings. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Remember, here at the Sara Carter Show, we're taking the story back. Today, I'm joined by Rebecca Weber, the CEO of the Association for Mature American Citizens. It's also known as AMAC. Explain the differences. What makes AMAC superior to AARP, beyond the fact that we don't agree with their leftist ideology?
What makes us so unique is that we truly do take our marching orders from our membership. Before we go out and about and advocate for any issue, we do consult with our AMAC members, and we do that through a variety of ways. But that really makes us very different, where AARP stood in support of Obamacare, even though their membership was largely against. AMAC will stand in support of our membership. In addition, Sara, we offer benefits. We offer benefits just like the AARP. Ours are better because we offer choices. For example, you can call AMAC for your Medicare, and we're not going to do a one-size-fits-all one plan. The AARP endorses United Healthcare, whereas AMAC has its own trusted in-house licensed insurance advisors that are working for AMAC, stand for our mission of faith, family, and freedom, and then go about offering real choices. We do a lot of things like that I think make us very different and make us, quite frankly, better.
Rebecca, thanks so much for being with me today. I'm honored to have you and AMAC as a sponsor for the Sara Carter Show. You know, for more information, folks, visit amac.us/Carter.